There's a particular kind of silence that falls over a cafeteria when Kale Morrow walks in. It is not the silence of reverence exactly, though reverence lives in it somewhere underneath the fear. It is the silence of 100 people collectively deciding that whatever they were about to say is actually not that important right now. Conversations dissolve mid-sentence. Forks pause between plates and mouths. Even the lunch lady at the soup station, a woman who has, in my observation, never been intimidated by anything in her 63 years of life, tends to ladle a little more carefully when he is nearby. I noticed this phenomenon on my very first day transferring to Aldenval University, standing at the entrance of the dining hall with a tray in my hands and absolutely no idea where I was supposed to sit. I had watched the sea of students part almost imperceptibly as a tall figure in a dark jacket cut through the room. Not dramatically, not theatrically, just parted. Like water around a ship that does not need to ask. That was 3 months ago. I know considerably more now. His name is Kale Morrow. He is a fourth year in the business college, though he takes electives across departments with the casual confidence of someone who has decided that conventional academic boundaries are merely suggestions. He is 22 years old. He is 6'2". He is the chapter president of the oldest and most influential fraternity on campus, a position he apparently inherited not through politics or campaigning, but because the previous president looked at him during his sophomore year and said, and I am quoting from campus legend here, "That's it. That's the guy." He runs twice a day, once in the morning before most of the campus is awake, and once in the evening when the track is nearly empty. He drinks black coffee. He does not smile often, but when he does, 3 people in my social circle have independently described the experience as briefly forgetting how language works. I know all of this because my roommate Petra told me all of this on day 1 before I had even unpacked my second box. What I did not know on day 1, and what I am still, frankly, processing, is what happened 6 weeks ago in this very cafeteria. It started with my hands. More specifically, it started with the fact that my hands, which are perfectly functional in approximately 95% of daily situations, become completely unreliable when I am carrying too many things and also trying to navigate a crowd and also trying not to think about the fact that I have a presentation in 40 minutes that I am not prepared for. On that particular afternoon, I was holding a lunch tray, a textbook I had foolishly convinced myself I would review between bites, a water bottle wedged under my arm, and my phone, because I had received a message from my study group that I was trying to read while walking, which is in retrospect a deeply optimistic thing to attempt. I stumbled. Not a graceful stumble. Not the kind that resolves itself in a single recovered step. The kind where one foot catches wrong and the whole architecture of your balance just quietly resigns its position and everything you are holding becomes briefly, catastrophically airborne. I braced for the crash, the soup, the humiliation, the dozens of eyes that would swing toward me in the specific way that says, "Oh, that's the new kid, I guess that tracks." The crash did not come. Something caught my tray. 2 hands, large, steady, appearing from my right side with a kind of unhurried precision that suggested they had been there for a moment already, waiting. The tray leveled. The soup stayed in its bowl. My water bottle was plucked from its mid-air trajectory and set back against my tray's edge with a small, definitive click. I looked up. Kale Morrow was looking down at me with an expression I could not read at all. Not irritated, not amused, not performing concern for an audience. Just looking. With dark eyes that were several degrees more attentive than I was prepared for. "You've got too much," he said. I stared at him. He took the textbook from the crook of my arm without asking, tucked it under his own. Then, without another word, he began walking. Not toward his usual table in the back corner, but toward the shorter lunch line where I had clearly been headed. I followed him. I could not explain why, except that my brain had essentially gone offline and my feet were operating on some more primitive autopilot level. He set my tray on the counter, returned my textbook, looked at me for one more moment with that same unreadable expression. Then he walked away. The cafeteria resumed its normal volume approximately 4 seconds after he was gone. Petra, who had witnessed everything from the salad bar, appeared at my elbow with the expression of someone who has just watched a solar eclipse and is not sure the appropriate emotional register. "Did Kale Morrow just—" she started. "Yes," I said. "Carry your yes. He's never done that for anyone." I picked up my soup spoon, put it down, picked it up again. "He probably just didn't want soup on his shoes," I said. Petra looked at me with something approaching pity. "Ren," she said, very gently, His shoes cost more than our meal plan. My name is Ren Calloway. I am 20 years old, a second-year majoring in communications with a minor in creative writing that I told my parents was a minor in digital marketing because I did not have the energy for that conversation. I am average height, which I say not with self-deprecation, but as a neutral geographic fact, the way you might say a city is located in the middle of a country. I have dark hair that does what it wants. I wear glasses that I have been meaning to get updated for 8 months. I am by any honest accounting completely unremarkable in the context of Aldenval University, which has approximately 4,000 students, a significant portion of whom are more conventionally striking, more socially connected, and more likely to be remembered after graduation than I am. I like it this way. I have always been better at observing than performing, at listening than projecting. I make friends slowly and keep them for a long time. I find most large social situations faintly exhausting in the way that a loud room is exhausting. Not unbearable, just draining in a way that requires recovery time afterward. In the weeks after the lunch tray incident, I told myself firmly and with great conviction that I had simply been a minor interruption in Kale Morrow's day, a small physics problem he had solved reflexively, a brief charitable impulse, now complete and filed away. I told myself this convincingly enough that I almost believed it, right up until the moment 8 days after the first incident, when I was sitting in the campus courtyard trying to eat a sandwich and read a chapter on media theory, and a shadow fell across my page. And I looked up and Kale Morrow was standing there with 2 coffees. He sat down across from me. He put one of the coffees in front of me. He opened the other one himself and looked at the building across the courtyard. I looked at the coffee. It was from the Good Campus Cafe, not the dining hall station, which meant he had walked an extra 7 minutes to get it. It was, I noticed with a small, strange feeling in my chest, exactly the kind I always order. Oat milk, 2 sugars, a shot of vanilla, which he could not possibly know. Except that he had somehow gotten it exactly right. "How did you?" I started. "You ordered it in front of me last Wednesday," he said, still looking at the building. "In the cafe line." I had been in the cafe line last Wednesday. I had not known he was behind me. I had not known he was capable of remembering the coffee orders of people he had exchanged approximately 9 words with. "Thank you," I said, because there was nothing else to say. He nodded, drank his coffee, did not leave. We sat there for 25 minutes. He read something on his phone. I read my chapter on media theory, which I retained approximately 0% of, for reasons that had nothing to do with the text and everything to do with the inexplicable warmth of sitting next to someone and not needing to perform. When he stood to go, he picked up both empty cups. "See you, Ren," he said. I watched him walk away across the courtyard. A group of students near the fountain went quiet as he passed them. I sat there with the ghost of warmth from the cup in my hands and thought very clearly I am in significant trouble. The thing about Kale Morrow, and everyone at Aldenvale has a version of this sentence, which they complete differently depending on who they are and what they have seen, is that he is not what he appears to be. Or, perhaps more accurately, he is exactly what he appears to be, which is the problem, because what he appears to be is many things simultaneously, and most people find it easier to pick one and dismiss the rest. He appears to be powerful, which is accurate. He appears to be cold, which is partially accurate and partially projection on the part of people who have mistaken quietness for coldness and restraint for disinterest. He appears to be the kind of person who moves through spaces without considering their effect on others, which is, I have come to understand over the last several weeks, almost entirely wrong. Kale Morrow is, in fact, acutely aware of his effect on others. He simply has, at some point in his history, made a decision about which effects to manage and which to let stand. I know this because I have been watching him the way I watch most things that confuse me, steadily, from a slight distance with my notebook nearby. The notebook is metaphorical. I am a communications major, not a journalist. But the impulse is the same. When something does not make sense, you look at it longer. You look at it from different angles. You write down what you see and hope that patterns emerge. What I have written down over 6 weeks of increasingly confusing proximity to Kale Morrow is this. He holds doors, not performatively, not for everyone in a sweeping gallant gesture, but specifically and quietly. If he sees someone behind him with full hands, he waits. If someone is struggling with a heavy door on the wrong side, he crosses the threshold to hold it from the right. He does this without fanfare and without checking whether anyone has noticed. He checks on his fraternity brothers with a consistency that does not match his reputation. There is a sophomore named Dax who had a rough month. Family stuff, from what I overheard, and twice in October I saw Kale sitting with him in the library at off hours, not studying, just present, not talking much, just there. He is funny. This one surprised me most. It is dry and quiet and dependent on the other person being paying close enough attention to catch it, which means most people miss it, which means most people do not know that Kale Morrow has a sense of humor. But I have over the course of multiple unexpected encounters laughed out loud 3 times at things he has said in his unhurried flat tone. And each time he has looked at me with something that is not quite a smile but is adjacent to one, something that lives in the corner of his expression watchful and pleased. He likes it when people laugh at his jokes. He just doesn't show that he likes it in a way most people are calibrated to catch. I am calibrated to catch it now. This is a problem. Petra is not subtle about what she thinks is happening. We are in our shared apartment kitchen. She is making tea. I am pretending to work on an essay that I have written approximately 2 sentences of. When she sets her mug down and says, with the energy of someone who has been waiting a patient amount of time and has now decided the time is up, when are you going to acknowledge that Kale Morrow is courting you? He's not courting me, I say. Ren, he carries your tray once. He carried my tray once because I was about to drop soup on both of us. He brought you coffee. A nice gesture. He sat with you for half an hour without speaking. We were both busy. He walked you to your Tuesday lecture. She holds up her hand before I can respond. Before you say anything. I was there, Ren. I saw it. He came out of the building across the quad, changed direction, and walked you to your building, and then turned around and went back the way he came. I open my mouth. Close it. I thought he was going the same way, I say, but even as I say it I hear how thin it is. Petra picks up her tea, takes a measured sip, looks at me over the rim with the expression of someone who has the patience of a saint and the tolerance of a person who is rapidly approaching their limit. He is the most feared person on this campus, she says, not unkindly. People make detours to avoid accidental eye contact with him. His fraternity brothers call him Sir when they're nervous. Last semester, a guy in the business school circulated a rumor about him and retracted it within 24 hours. Not because anyone threatened him, but because Kale just looked at him in the hallway once, and the guy apparently lost the ability to hold his ground. I'm aware of his reputation, I say, and he is bringing you vanilla oat milk coffees and carrying your stuff and showing up wherever you are. She puts her mug down with a soft, definitive clink. Ren, I say this with absolute love. He is not doing that for everyone. I stare at my laptop screen. The cursor blinks in the empty essay document with something that feels, irrationally, like judgment. I don't know what to do with that, I say honestly. Petra sits down across from me. Her voice is gentler now. Yes, you do, she says. You're just scared. Tch. She is not wrong. The thing that Petra understands about me because she has known me for 3 months and is perceptive, in the way that quiet people often are, is that I am not scared of Kale Morrow the way most people are scared of Kale Morrow. I am not scared of him because he is intimidating, or because of his reputation, or because of the weight he carries in every room he enters. I am scared of him because for the first time in a very long time someone has been paying attention to me in a way that feels like being truly seen, and I do not know what to do with that. I have spent most of my life being comfortable in the background. I have spent most of my social existence learning to make myself easy to overlook, not because I am ashamed of who I am, but because being easy to overlook is a very effective way of never getting hurt by someone who decided you were not worth looking at. Kale Morrow is not easy to overlook, and he appears somehow, inexplicably, to have decided that I am not easy to overlook either. This is, I think, the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. The accidents, or whatever they are, because I am increasingly less certain they are accidents, continue. There is the afternoon in the library when I am working in the 3rd floor study carrels, the ones in the back that are mostly unused because they are close to the vents and slightly cold. And I look up from my screen to find Cal settling into the carrel directly across the narrow aisle from me. He has a laptop and a stack of case study printouts that he arranges with methodical efficiency. He glances at me once. You picked the cold section, he observes. It keeps me awake, I say. He considers this, pulls a jacket from his bag. He apparently carries an extra and sets it on the divider between us without comment. I look at the jacket. I'm fine, I say. You've been rubbing your arms for 10 minutes. I had not realized I was doing this. I take the jacket. It smells like cedar and something slightly warmer underneath, some kind of bass note that I am not going to think about too carefully. I put it over my shoulders like a blanket and return to my work and try not to notice that the library, which has 3 floors and hundreds of seats, apparently contains exactly one person who noticed I was cold. We work in silence for 2 hours. When I leave, I fold the jacket and set it on his side of the divider. Thank you, I say. He looks up from his case study. His eyes move from the jacket to my face with that particular quality of attention that I have started to think of as his default mode. Not intense, exactly, more like precise, like he is always gathering a little more information than other people think to. You can keep it, he says. My heart does something I will not describe. It's your jacket, I say. It's just a jacket. Cale. Something shifts in his expression at the sound of his name, a slight softening, barely perceptible, like a room whose temperature adjusts by 1 degree. He reaches out and takes the jacket. His fingers brush the back of my hand in the transaction, which is accidental and lasts less than half a second, and which I think about for approximately 4 days. There is the morning he falls into step beside me on the path between the East Residence buildings and the main academic complex, a path I walk every single morning, which he theoretically has no reason to be on unless his morning run has started routing itself in a very specific direction. We walk without speaking for a while. The campus is still early, quiet, thin October light, making the brick buildings look warmer than they are. You're up early, he says eventually. I have an 8 a.m. Those shouldn't be legal. Tell that to Professor Harwick. A small pause. Harwick teaches Introduction to Media Systems on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I look at him sideways. How do you know that? I took it sophomore year. This is plausible. This is completely plausible. I am going to treat this as completely plausible and not examine it further. He's not that bad, I say. Once you learn to just let him monologue for the first 10 minutes, he once talked for 45 minutes about the history of the printing press before anyone realized the slides weren't loading. I laugh and it comes out louder than I intended in the morning. Quiet. A few pigeons scatter from a nearby bench. Cale looks at me with that corner of expression thing that is not a smile but is the outline of one. His PowerPoints are still terrible, I say, once I've recovered. Some things don't change. We reach the fork where my building branches off from the main path. I stop. He stops a beat after me, which means he was going to keep going in my direction, which means, this is me, I say. He looks at the building, looks at me. I know, he says. A beat. Have a good lecture, Ran. He turns and goes back the way he came, and I stand at the fork for a moment longer than I should, watching him go. And then I take a breath and go up the steps and into the building, and I stand in the empty hallway before class starts, and I think with great clarity and significant emotional intensity, what is happening? Petra has a theory, which she presents to me over dinner in our apartment with the gravity of a person unveiling a thesis. The theory is this. Cale Morrow has, at some point in the last several years, decided that the most effective way to protect himself is to become so formidable that no one approaches him casually. He has built a perimeter. He maintains it. Everyone at Aldenvale operates within the perimeter's understanding. You do not bother Cale Morrow. You do not make assumptions about Cale Morrow. You do not presume intimacy with Cale Morrow. And because everyone maintains this understanding, Cale Morrow has not, in Petra's informed estimate, had a genuine spontaneous interaction with someone who did not already owe him something or want something from him in quite a long time. And then I showed up. Unremarkable second year, communications major, glasses. Someone who, when Cale caught my lunch tray, said thank you and did not immediately begin treating him like an opportunity or a social asset or something to be afraid of. Someone who, in every subsequent encounter, has simply been present, honest, occasionally funny, not performing. You're not scared of him, Petra says. Not really. And I think he knows it. And I think, she pauses, choosing her words, I think someone like that, someone who has built something that keeps everyone at a distance when they meet someone who just, I don't know, walks up to the edge of that and doesn't run, they notice. I think about this. That's a very generous interpretation, I say. I think it's accurate, she says. It could also be, I say, that he is just a decent person who occasionally helps people with their lunch trays. Petra gives me the look. He remembers your coffee order, she says. I eat my food in silence for a moment. He does remember my coffee order. I concede. November arrives with the particular cruelty of a semester entering its final stretch. Deadlines compounding, everyone's social patience thinning, the dining hall atmosphere shifting from lazy camaraderie to hunched individual survival. I have 3 major assignments due in the space of 2 weeks, and I have, in classic form, managed to start all of them late enough that I am now living in the library. On the 3rd consecutive evening of this arrangement, I am in my usual cold carrel surrounded by printed sources and a cold cup of coffee from 4 hours ago, and I am starting to understand, in the bone-deep way that only genuine fatigue produces, that I have made structural errors in my time management that cannot be corrected by working harder tonight. There is a particular brand of exhaustion that sits behind your eyes and makes everything feel slightly further away than it should be. I have been there for a couple of hours. I am staring at the opening paragraph of my media theory analysis, which needs to be 3,000 words and is currently 200 when the chair across from me scrapes back and weight settles into it. I look up. KL is watching me with an expression that has shifted from its usual unreadability into something closer to concern, not dramatic concern, the kind that is quiet and specific and directed. "You look terrible," he says. "Under normal circumstances, I might protest this. Currently, I do not have the resources." "Thank you," I say. "I feel terrible." "When did you eat?" I think about this. Lunch. He checks his phone. It's 9:47. He stands. I think he is leaving. Instead, he picks up my empty coffee cup, considers it for a moment, and sets it back down. "Come on," he says. "I have to." "You're not going to finish anything useful tonight, Ren. You can barely keep your eyes open. Come on." There is something in his tone that is not a command exactly. It does not operate through authority. It operates through the simpler mechanism of being correct and being said by someone who has noticed you and decided you matter enough to notice. I save my document. I close my laptop. I gather my things. We walk out of the library into the cold night. He sets a pace that is unhurried, and I fall into step beside him without thinking about where we are going, because somehow this does not feel like something I need to question right now. He takes me to a small noodle place 2 blocks off campus. Not a student spot, the kind of place that stays open late and is lit warm and does not ask anything of you except to eat. We sit across from each other in a booth by the window. He orders without looking at the menu. I order without overthinking it, because I am too tired to overthink anything. The food comes. We eat. For a while, neither of us talks. "You don't have to do this," I say eventually. Not reproachfully. Just noting it. "I know," he says. "I'm serious. You don't owe me anything." He looks at me across the table. The warm light of the restaurant does something particular to his expression. Takes the edges off slightly, or maybe I am simply seeing it more clearly in a context that is not the middle of a crowd. "I'm aware of what I owe and what I don't," he says. "I just mean Ren." He says my name in the same way he always does. Not loudly, but with a quality of attention that makes the sound land precisely. "Eat your food." I eat my food. Somewhere around the middle of the meal, he says, without particular preamble. "What's the assignment?" "Media theory analysis. Framing and public narrative in contemporary journalism." "What angle are you taking?" I look at him. "You want to hear about my assignment?" "I'm asking, aren't I?" I talk about my assignment for the better part of 20 minutes. He listens the way he does everything, with that quiet, precise attention that makes you feel like what you're saying is worth being heard. He asks questions, real ones, not the kind people ask when they are waiting for their turn to talk. By the time the food is gone and we're sitting with tea, he ordered tea for both of us without asking, which should perhaps irritate me but somehow only makes me feel warm. I have, without entirely meaning to outline the entire structure of an argument that is considerably more interesting than what I had started with. "That's your paper," he says. "I know," I say, and I am surprised by how much I mean it. "How did you do that?" He tilts his head slightly. "Do what?" "Ask the questions that." I stop. "Try again." "Most people listen to figure out what to say next. You listen differently." He looks at me for a moment. "You pay attention to things," he says finally. "You notice things about people. I'm a communications major. It's sort of the job." "It's not the major," he says. "It's you." The table between us feels simultaneously very small and very significant. "Kale," I say. "Yeah, what is this?" A pause. He looks at the window beside us. The street outside, The sparse night traffic, a couple walking past with their collars up against the cold. I'm not sure, he says. I've been trying to figure that out. For how long? He meets my eyes. Since the lunch tray. That was 6 weeks ago. Yeah. My heart is doing the thing again. I leave it alone. I don't really know how to do this, I say. It comes out more honestly than I intended, but I don't take it back. Whatever this is. I'm not good at. I gesture vaguely between us. Neither am I, he says. You seem like you're doing fine. Something in his expression shifts, a crack in the composure, small and real. I've been showing up wherever you are for 6 weeks, he says very quietly. I've been carrying things and buying coffee and finding reasons. That is not. He stops. That is not what I normally do. I know, I say. Then you know I don't have a script for this either. Outside, a cold wind pushes a scrap of paper down the sidewalk. Inside, the restaurant is warm and nearly empty, and the tea in my hands is the right temperature. I know, I say again. Softer this time. We walk back to campus in the cold. Our breath makes small clouds in the air. At some point, without discussion, the distance between us closes until we are walking close enough that his arm brushes mine on every other step. Neither of us adjusts. At the junction where the path splits toward my building, we stop. This has happened before, this exact geographic moment. But something in it is different now, charged differently, because 6 weeks of accumulating silences have led here to this junction in the cold. And I am looking at Cale Morrow's face in the dark, and he is looking back at mine with an expression that is no longer unreadable. I want to see you, he says, not accidentally. Not because I happen to be near a place you were going. My chest is doing something complicated. You mean actually on purpose, I say. On purpose, he confirms. With you knowing it's on purpose, Cale. I know it's, he stops. Looks away briefly, then back. I'm aware that I'm not. Another stop. He takes a breath. People have a version of me. Most of the time that version is convenient, so I let it stand. But I don't. I know, I say. You don't know what I was going to say. You were going to say you don't want me to be scared of you. A long pause. Yeah, he says. I'm not, I say. I have never been. And then because I have had a long and exhausting day and I am running on too little food and 6 weeks of circling something without landing, I say, I'm scared of how much I want to stop pretending this is something it isn't. He is very still. What is it? He asks. I don't know, I say. Something I haven't felt before. Something I don't have the right word for yet. He reaches out. His hand finds mine in the dark. Careful and deliberate. And he holds it with the same quality of attention he brings to everything. Like he has decided this matters and intends to treat it accordingly. We can find the word, he says. We have time. I look down at our hands, back up at him. Okay, I say. He squeezes once, light and real. Okay, he says. Dating Cale Morrow is not what I expected. Though I am not entirely sure what I expected. Something more dramatic, perhaps. Something more shamanic, perhaps. Something with more ceremony and more visible stakes. Something befitting the mythology. What it actually is this. It is Sunday mornings at the Good Cafe where he brings my coffee to the table without being asked and sits down and reads something on his phone while I work on whatever is due that week. And we talk when we have things to say and do not when we don't. And there is no performance of couplehood in any of it, just a comfortable warmth that has settled in between us like weather. It is him texting me at odd hours with things that made him think of me. An article about a media ethics case I had mentioned, once a sentence from a book he found unexpectedly funny. A photograph of a sunrise he caught on his morning run sent without comment, which I saved to my phone and do not explain to anyone. It is the way the cafeteria's silence changes now when he walks in and sits next to me. Because I am still in my usual spot and he has simply, matter-of-factly, begun sitting beside me. The silence now has a different quality. Not fear, but the particular electric attention of a social ecosystem recalibrating. I catch people trying to do the math of this and arriving at expressions of visible confusion. It is Petra in our apartment saying, I told you, in a very restrained tone that communicates clearly she is exercising significant emotional discipline in not being more emphatic about this. It is Cale's fraternity brothers who treat me with the kind of elaborate, slightly nervous courtesy that suggests they have been briefed in some way. Not by Cale explicitly, I don't think, but by the general social transmission of meaning that flows through organizations of people who pay attention to each other. The most notable of them is a third year named Gio who shook my hand the first time we met with the focused energy of someone making sure they are creating a positive first impression, which I found both touching and mildly overwhelming. It is a specific Friday evening in late November sitting on the floor of Kale's apartment, which is off campus, which is clean in the precise way of someone with actual standards, which smells like cedar and coffee and faintly of whatever laundry detergent he uses, working side by side on our respective assignments while something low and instrumental plays from a speaker in the corner. He is leaning against the couch. I am leaning against him, which happened gradually and without ceremony over the course of 2 hours, and which neither of us has commented on or adjusted. His hand is resting on my shoulder. Occasionally he reads something over my shoulder and says something brief and useful about it. Occasionally I read a sentence from his case study and ask a question he hasn't considered. At one point he puts his chin on top of my head, entirely without announcement, the way you might shift your weight just a settling. A small claiming, and I stop pretending to look at my screen and just exist in this moment for a minute. This is nice, I say, quietly. His hand adjusts against my shoulder. Yeah, he says. I meet his friends properly over the course of several weeks, and what I discover is that the people who know Kale well have a relationship with him that looks nothing like his reputation. There is Gio, who is loud and warm and has apparently been Kale's closest friend since freshman year, and who tells me conspiratorially about 20 minutes into our first real conversation that Kale talked about me before asking me out, which means there was a period where Kale was processing this out loud to his best friend, which means at some point Kale Morrow sat in this apartment and said something about me that was important enough to say. I do not ask Gio what was said. Some things are better arrived at naturally. There is Sem, who is quiet like Kale but in a different register, where Kale's quietness is contained and watchful. Sem's is soft, like the quietness of someone who is always slightly elsewhere in their thoughts. He is studying architecture and thinks in structures, and makes oblique observations that take a moment to land and then land very hard. His observation about Kale and me, delivered 2 weeks in over a group dinner at a long table. He smiles more now. Directed at no one in particular. Noticed by everyone. I look at Kale across the table. He is in conversation with Gio, not listening to Sem. He catches my eye anyway, some peripheral awareness of being observed drawing his attention, and the edge of his mouth moves, that fractional thing, that not quite smile that is the outline of one. I look away before he can see that my face has done something I am not in control of. There is a night in December, close to the end of semester, when the campus has gone quiet with the particular exhaustion of exams, and everyone is either buried in the library or has already gone home for the break. Kale and I are on the roof of his apartment building. He has a key because he has lived there for 2 years and the super trusts him, and also because, as far as I can tell, Kale has keys to things in the way that competent, responsible people are given access to things. He brought blankets, plural, in the methodical way he does everything, having considered the conditions in advance. There is also coffee because he always brings coffee, which means I've been warm in every outdoor situation I have been in since November. We are lying on our backs on a flattened section of roof shoulders touching, looking at the sky, which is not particularly spectacular, city light blunting most of the stars, but which has a clarity tonight that makes it feel like something anyway. When did you know? He asks. Know what? That you wanted. He pauses. That you didn't just want to keep pretending it was nothing. I think about this honestly. I want to give him the real answer, not the comfortable one. Probably the jacket, I say. In the library. When you put it on the divider. I spent that whole session thinking about nothing except the fact that you had noticed I was cold. You were rubbing your arms for 10 minutes. I know. I pause. People don't notice that, in general. I'm not very loud about what I need, and so most of the time people just don't notice. I look at the sky. You noticed. A silence. I have always noticed you, he says. Since before the tray, I noticed you the week you transferred. You sat in the corner of the dining hall that first day, and you were looking at everyone with this expression. Not nervous, just taking everything in. Like you were already trying to understand the place. I turn my head to look at him. His profile against the city pale sky. You noticed me before the tray, I say. Yes. Why didn't you? Because I am very good at not doing things, he says, with a dryness that is self-aware and slightly rueful. And because I had convinced myself that noticing someone from a distance was the extent of what I was capable of. And then I almost dropped soup on you. And then you almost dropped soup on me. I laugh, and the sound goes up into the cold air. His shoulder shakes against mine, the smallest, most contained version of a laugh. The soup changed things, I say. The soup changed things, he confirms. We lie there for a while in the cold that the blankets keep at bay. What about you? I ask. He is quiet for a moment. You said thank you, he says. When I caught the tray, just thank you, simply, without making anything of it in either direction. Not flustered, not grateful in the way that required something back. Just thank you, he pauses. And then you looked at me like I was a person. My chest does the thing. I let it. You are a person, I say. I know, but a lot of people forget that. I reach out in the dark and find his hand, and he turns it and takes mine properly, and we lie there like that in the cold while the city hums its low frequencies around us. For what it's worth, I say quietly, I see a person. I've always seen a person. His fingers tighten around mine. He doesn't say anything for a long time. When he does, his voice is quieter than usual, less composed, in the precise specific way of someone allowing something they have held at a managed distance to be close for a moment. I know, he says. That's the thing, Ren. That has always been the thing. The complications, when they arrive from a direction I didn't anticipate, because I had been so focused on the internal landscape of whatever this was. The small daily accumulations, the adjusting of distance, the learning of each other in the quiet, unhurried way we had been learning. That I had not spent much time thinking about the external. Specifically, I had not spent much time thinking about what it looks like to the campus at large, for the most feared person in the building to be visibly, unmistakably spending his time with an unremarkable second year from communications. The gossip, when it crystallizes, is not malicious exactly. Most of it is just confused, the social version of people squinting at something and trying to make the image resolve. But some of it is pointed in the way gossip sometimes is, the kind that tries to construct a narrative that explains the inexplicable in terms of utility. What does he get out of it? What does the quiet kid have on him? Why would Cale Morrow, who could have anyone, the whisper logic goes, who has apparently declined to have anyone for years, pick this? I hear about it secondhand through Petra, who hears about it through her own social network, and who tells me with the careful specificity of someone who wants me to have the information without being ambushed by it. I sit with it for a day, then I mention it to Cale. We are at the cafe. Sunday morning. He has his hands around his black coffee. I watch him while I talk, watching for the clench of the jaw or the flatness in the eyes that I have come to recognize as his tell, for something that bothers him more than he will acknowledge directly. I see it, briefly, and then he controls it. Ignore it, he says. I'm not upset by it, I say. I'm just telling you what I heard, in case you hadn't. I had. And, he looks at his coffee, back at me. I don't owe anyone an explanation, he says, about who I spend my time with or why. No, I agree, but I want to know what you think about it. A pause. This is something I've learned about Cale, that direct questions about his inner state are received differently than other questions. They require a moment of adjustment, a shifting from the mode of external navigation to something more interior. He is not bad at it. He just needs the moment. I think, he says carefully, that people who have decided I am a particular kind of thing find it disorienting when I behave in ways that contradict that. And I think... He stops. I think I've spent a long time being what people expected, because it was easier than correcting them, and I am less interested in that now. Because of me, I ask. His eyes meet mine. Because of me, he says. You reminded me of something I had stopped being sure I still knew how to do. What? Want something, he says simply. The cafe is warm and full of the quiet sounds of Saturday morning. Someone at the counter is ordering something elaborate. Outside, 2 students are walking with scarves pulled up against the December cold. I reach across the small table and touch the back of his hand once. Not taking it, just touching. A small acknowledgement that takes no translation. Okay, I say. He turns his hand over and takes mine. Okay, he says. The harder thing, harder than the gossip, harder than the adjustment of public expectation, comes in the form of a conversation I have with Cale in early December in his apartment. Over the kind of late evening that has become its own category in my life, the two of us, the low music, the warm room. The gradual dissolution of whatever energy the day has demanded. I have been talking about my family, which I don't do often, not because of any particular drama, but because my family is, by most measures, pleasantly ordinary in ways that do not generate stories. I have a younger sister. My parents are together and reasonably kind and have, in the way of reasonably kind parents, never been particularly sure what to do with a child who spends more time observing than participating. And then, because the evening has the particular quality of honesty that late hours sometimes produce, I say something true that I have not said to anyone at Alden Volley. I say, I spent most of high school being basically invisible, not unhappily. I want to be clear about that. I chose a lot of it. I was good at school and had a few close friends and didn't need more than that. But I was never someone that anyone looked at twice. Romantically, I mean. And I think I spent a long time building a very complete peace with the idea that I was the person people were comfortable with, not the person people wanted. The room is quiet. I'm telling you this, I continue, because I want you to understand that I don't always know how to receive this. I gesture between us. You, whatever this is. I keep waiting for the part where it makes sense in a way I'm familiar with, where you lose interest, or it turns out I misread it, or Ren. His voice is quiet and firm and close. I'm not fishing for reassurance, I say. I'm just trying to explain why I might be. I know you're not. He shifts on the couch, turns to face me more fully. I know exactly what you're doing, because I do the same thing. I build the rationale for the retreat before the retreat is necessary. I identify the exit before I've gone through the door. I look at him. I'm not going to lose interest, he says, not with the electric conviction of someone promising something dramatic. In a quieter register, the register of someone who means something carefully, who has considered it. You don't know that, I say. I've known you for 3 months, he says. I've been paying attention every day for 3 months. And every time I think I have the full picture, I see something new. I don't think that's going to stop. I sit with this. That's a terrifying thing to say to someone, I say finally. Yeah, he agrees, with a softness that is entirely unlike his public register. I know. I look at him. The familiar lines of his face. The careful composure that I have learned to read underneath rather than at the surface. The dark eyes that are right now. Entirely unguarded in the way they are occasionally in these late private hours. Okay, I say. Then me too. Same, all of it. The not smile curves, properly this time, into an actual one. Small and real and private. Okay, he says. He pulls me gently, unhurriedly closer until I am against his side and his arm is around me and my head is somewhere in the vicinity of his shoulder and the room is warm and the music is low. And I exist in this without bracing for its end, which is itself a new thing. The break happens. We are both home, different cities, several hours apart, for 3 weeks. We text every day. This surprises me, not because I doubted that we would, but because the texture of it surprises me, how easy it is, how entirely without effort. He texts me things that made him think of me. An article about something I mentioned before the break, a photo of early snow, a question about a book I recommended. I text him things that make me think of him, which I am learning is a surprisingly wide category of things. Late nights, when we have both run out of other things to do, we talk on the phone in the dark with the particular quality of darkness honesty. And I learn things I could not have learned from proximity alone. I learn that he grew up in a large family with a complicated internal politics, that he has 2 older brothers who set a specific template, and that he spent a long time either measuring himself against or trying to distinguish himself from, and that this has produced in him the combination of high competence and low need for external validation that most people read as coldness. I learned that he chose Aldenvale specifically because it was far enough from home to be genuinely separate, that he built the chapter presidency out of a sense that if he was going to be here he might as well be useful, that the reputation was a byproduct and not a goal. I learned that he has 2 playlists he uses for running, that his coffee order is the one thing he is genuinely fussy about, that he has read more fiction than his academic profile would suggest, that he finds the architecture of old buildings unexpectedly interesting. I learned that he does not often tell people things, that he keeps most of his interior landscape private not from dishonesty, but from a long-practiced habit of self-sufficiency, that talking to me in the dark on the phone is something he is doing differently than he has done it before. You tell me things, I say one night. I do, he agrees. Is that different? A pause. Very, he says. He picks me up from the train station when I come back in January. I round the corner past the main entrance and see him standing against the wall with his hands in his jacket pockets, watching the arrivals with the patient economy of someone who knows exactly how to wait. He sees me at the same moment I see him. The not smile, the real one, just for a moment before composure reasserts itself as habit. He picks up my bag without asking. I look at him. I have it, I say. I know you have it, he says, already walking. I fall into step beside him and we walk out of the station into the cold January air, and I think about the first time I saw him in the dining hall. The parting silence, the figure in the dark jacket, the mythology of him assembling itself in a room of averted eyes. And then I look at him beside me. The same dark jacket. The same precise way of moving through space, the same contained gravity that makes rooms adjust around him, and the warm press of his shoulder against mine, unhurried and deliberate, present and real. Welcome back, he says. Thank you for coming, I say. Of course. The city opens around us. The cold air is clean. Somewhere ahead, Aldenville is resuming its semester with all its usual frequencies and pressures and social geometries, and somewhere inside it there is a cafeteria that has a table where someone used to sit alone, and a cold carol on the library's third floor, and a fork in the path between buildings where something was decided. I pull my coat closer against the cold. Kale reaches out and adjusts my collar without comment. A small gesture, one I have come to understand as his native language, more fluent than words. Okay, he asks. Yeah, I say. Okay. Spring at Aldenvale comes with the irresponsible enthusiasm of a season that has been held back too long. The quad fills. The cafe runs out of iced drinks by noon. Everyone's mood lifts by an increment that is small but perceptible. The way a key change in music changes the whole emotional character of a piece without moving very far. I am walking to class on a morning in late March when my phone buzzes with a text from Gio that says, Corridor B, second floor right now, you have to see this. This is, I have learned how Gio communicates when something is happening that he considers important. I make a small detour. Corridor B's second floor is the long hallway between the business college and the administrative offices, and what is happening when I arrive is this. A group of first years clearly lost are attempting to navigate toward an office with a map they are holding slightly wrong, and Kale is in the hallway for reasons I do not know, and, instead of walking past, instead of observing them from a distance as the sort of problem that solves itself, he has stopped. He is looking at their map. He is pointing them toward the right direction. Speaking in a tone I can see from here is quiet and direct and not impatient. One of the first years, the one holding the map, nods repeatedly, rapidly, with the energy of someone who is prepared to be intimidated, and instead received, unexpectedly, practical assistance delivered without ceremony. Kale finishes, hands the map back, continues down the hallway. The group of first years watches him go, and then they look at each other with the expression of people who have just had a piece of information about the world corrected. Gio appears at my elbow. He does this, Gio says with an affection that is absolutely unguarded. All the time. Everyone thinks he's, and he just does this. I know, I say. You change things, Gio says. No, I say. He's always been this. I just paid attention. Gio looks at me for a moment. Then he does something I was not prepared for, which is that he pats me on the shoulder with the warm, slightly overwhelming energy of someone who has decided you are, definitively, good. He told me, Gio says, before he asked you out, that you were the first person he'd met in years who made him feel. He pauses, deciding how much to say. He said you made him feel like himself. I stand in the hallway of Corridor B's second floor in the spring morning light coming through the windows at the end of the hall, and I think about a Tuesday in October when I almost dropped soup on a man who caught my tray without being asked and changed the entire geography of my year. Yeah, I say softly. Likewise. It is a Friday in April. The cafeteria is doing its usual lunchtime thing, a particular ecology of sound and movement that I have, over the course of a year, learned to read like a language. I am carrying my tray. It is loaded up because I picked the corner station first and then remembered the soup was at the other end and made a second pass. And now I have too much, and my water bottle is wedged under my arm, and I am trying to check a message at the same time, which is, if I am being honest, an error I have made before. I am very nearly to my table when I feel the water bottle go. A hand catches it. I look up. Kale is standing beside me with the expression that I have learned is his version of amusement. Contained, precise, living at the edges. You still do this, he says. I had to check my messages, I say. He takes the water bottle. Then he takes my tray. I can carry my own tray, I say. I know, he says, and carries it to our table. I follow him. The cafeteria does its thing, the micro-adjustment of social atmosphere, the recalibration. But it is different now from how it was in October. Less fear in the frequency, more of something else, something I do not have a single word for yet, but which is made up of the small daily evidence of a person being known accurately and choosing to stay. We sit down. He slides my tray back to me. His coffee is black. Mine has exactly the right amount of oat milk and vanilla. He did not ask this morning. He does not need to. Across the table, in the noisy, warm, ordinary ecosystem of the university cafeteria, I look at the person who caught a lunch tray in October without being asked, and I think, I do not have the word yet, but I think we are getting close. He looks up from his coffee. The corner of expression thing. The not quite smile. What? He says. Nothing, I say. Eat. His mouth moves into the real one, small and private, and mine. Yes, sir, he says, very quietly. And the cafeteria hums around us, and the spring light comes through the tall windows in long, warm angles, and I eat my lunch and he eats his. And everything that has been accumulating since October sits between us like a full and pleasant weight, unhurried, ongoing, and entirely, quietly ours. If you made it to the end, you're my kind of person. Leave a subscribe. Comment down your favorite part of the story, and if you want early access to videos, exclusive content, or just want to support the channel, hit that join button right below the video. Even one member genuinely means the world to me. See you in the next one.